Now, you have been in politics a very long time, as we can see from those pictures and those clips from the archive. How's it changed, sort of in your view, and has it changed for the better?
Well, probably in some ways it has. When I started, it was deferential, it was class divided, there was a huge difference between the tweedy knights of the shires on the Conservative benches and the very working class guys on the Labour benches, and the politics was tribal. Most families voted the same way all the time.
Do you not think it's still tribal?
An awful lot of it. Most people under the age of 50 decide who they're going to vote for about 2 or 3 days before polling day. I think it's completely changed, which makes it so uncertain, quite exciting. But in other ways, it has diminished because Parliament was more powerful when I started. Everything was rooted in Parliament. Although things were a bit too deferential, government was properly accountable, government was very collective, there were big cabinet ministers, all of whom had to agree things. Parliament, the Prime Minister was powerful first amongst
Margaret
equals.
Thatcher surely was.
And the sensible debate took place in the media, who were a bit too deferential, but did report serious issues. Nowadays, it's all the celebrity culture, it's public relations, it's can we get something about somebody's sex life or their money? If not, what exciting can we hang the news on to tomorrow's headlines?
Has that sort of cramped your style, this sort of practice of modern politics, which is about message discipline, sticking to the line, media grids and so on? Have you found that difficult?
Well, I've totally ignored it.
Yes, that hasn't escaped our notice.
I think
thank goodness.
David was very kind, I think, and his acolytes. I think they just decided there was a Clark rule, and I did 4 years without going along with this stuff very much. I think it's done damage to politics. I think the talking clock type politics and the sloganising is not the main cause, but it's one of the things that's fed the very low level of regard for politicians nowadays.
Right, and you say that David Cameron and his acolytes gave you sort of free rein, or they just accepted that Ken Clarke was Ken Clarke, but you said in the book that you felt plotted against and deceived when you discovered in 2014, and I remember this happening at the time, that Downing Street advisers were trying to prevent you from appearing on Question Time. Why did they want to keep you off the programme?
I think because they weren't at all sure what I was going to say, and I wouldn't use the slogan. I mean, it was a silly, childish incident. I mean, it is true at the time. The way they went about it, which we'll discuss if you want me to give time, I mean, it really was lying to me and lying to the producer and trying to slip in a more in their opinion, more conformist advocate.
What did they say to you? How did they explain it to you?
They told me that the programme had made a mistake and booked 2 Conservatives, and so unfortunately they were sticking with the other one, but that they'd have me on sometime in future. The producer was rung up by the same people and told I was very ill, and though this wasn't being made public because it was a health matter, that I wasn't able to go there, and they very helpfully could provide somebody who at very short notice could take my place.
I see.
Well, it never occurred to them that I would ring the producer and say, I thought we fixed this up ages ago. What on earth's gone wrong?
Well, they miscalculated there. You served 3 Conservative Prime Ministers. How did they compare?
Well, they were all quite remarkable people, and they were all completely and utterly different personalities. Ted and Margaret were 2 of the most one-off personalities I've ever met. They unlike each other, chalk and cheese. John Major was a sort of absolutely the ultimate nice guy, being battered hopelessly, and Cameron was the classic purveyor of the Blair style of government. Very successful at first. The great thing, they won't be given credit for it, Cameron and Osborne did rescue the country from financial catastrophe. Thereafter, we got into it's too recent.
Because what do you think his legacy will be?
Going back to the old politics, although Thatcher was a bloody difficult woman, and I had a very robust...
You need to be careful with that phrase.
A very robust relationship with her. I have to concede, but firstly, I got all right with her, and she was the best Prime Minister. The Thatcher government actually was the one that transformed the country for the better. The major government consolidated it and carried on in exactly the same way, presenting it in a slightly more gentle fashion. But Thatcher was the remarkable one to have worked for.
Do you think you changed yourself, or the perception of how you were viewed by other politicians? Nick Clegg joked during the coalition that he counted you as one of the Lib Dems in the cabinet. The Spectator even called you Yellow Ken in the last Parliament. How did that make you feel? Do you think you acquired a more cuddly Conservative image?
Well, I always just say to Nick, you're a one-nation Conservative. You only joined the Liberal Democrats because we were so fanatically anti-European at the time he was starting. When I first met him, he was an assistant to Leon Britton, waiting to get a Conservative candidature somewhere. But leaving that on one side, politics has moved. And I actually am a believer in free market economics with a social conscience. I'm an economic liberal and a social liberal. So I'm not actually as left-wing as people think.
But are you isolated now? You're a diminishing breed, aren't you, on the Conservative benches?
Well, the Europeans remain, I think, in the majority on the Conservative benches, as in every other political party in the House of Commons, apart from the Democratic Unionists. But we're all slightly isolated, and I'm certainly, being one of the stronger pro-Europeans who never agreed with the idea of a referendum anyway, with a constituency that voted to remain, I probably am a bit particularly on my own, but that happens to most veteran politicians.
It doesn't seem to bother you either.
Not at all.
We'll have to do your addiction to standing for the leadership another time.
Sure.